Well, folks, today might be the day I find my ML500's replacement, which I didn't think I'd be doing so soon. Well, here it is, my 2000 ML55 AMG. Wait a second. This is not the car. 1 second. So, my not-so-glorious ML55 AMG, which is covered in bird shit. Things that stand out to you first, probably those ugly yellow headlights. That'll be changed and fixed soon. You'll also notice the weird trim below the headlights has these weird black squares. That's from a previous owner fitting some questionable daytime running LED lights, which just looked awful. I tried peeling them off, found out that they were weirdly put on there with some very sticky adhesive, and the actual trim was broken and the paint was messed up anyways, so I figured I'd go to the junkyard and find a new pair of those to replace that terrible setup over there. The grille's going to be changed out, we're going to put a new hood style on as well, and we'll also get some PDR to fix that dent on the hood because that is quite an eyesore. But other than that, this thing's actually not so bad. But most of its recent history is relatively unknown, so I decided the first thing I'll do is just some basic fluid changes. Stuff like engine oil, transmission fluid, the front and rear differentials, along with the transfer case. I have learned a lot from my ML500, which I will be applying directly to this 55, as they are mostly the same car beneath the surface, other than, 0.4 liters of displacement, a very complex steering rack in the 55, and a few other things, but overall they're very, very similar. Which is good news because the 55 and 500 are both very, very easy to work on and also very reliable with the M113 V8. Now, of course, I'll be doing spark plugs, engine air filter, stuff like that, along with valve cover gaskets, perhaps a coolant flush. But today, the easy stuff, the stuff I could get my hands on very quickly, very typical fluids. These MLs use very basic fluids, nothing very fancy aside from the power steering fluid, which is, of course, that expensive Pentosin CHF 11S, but the rest of the stuff is pretty basic and can be picked up at most auto parts stores, and CHF can be picked up there as well, but it is very expensive, like I said. Plus, the previous owner told me that he had the steering rack completely rebuilt within the last year or so, so I was good news and one more reason to buy this car. And yes, I know it looks a bit rough right now, but it will look better than my 500 ever did once we're done with it. Let us start off with changing the oil. First things first, gotta pop the hood. Did the grill pop out? Yes, it did. Behold, the M113 V8 in its 5.4 liter glory. We're just gonna ignore this very suspicious looking, terrible harness for the daytime running lights this previous owner installed because it looks quite janky. And also, if you guys saw how it was wired in the fuse box, you'd be terrified. This wire right here was pretty much going directly into the fuse box. There was no fuse attached, just this. So that was really nice and safe. We're definitely gonna get rid of this. Well, that's a very crunchy looking washer fluid tank. That'll certainly need to be changed because that looks like it's gonna fall apart any second now. As many of you know, I'm normally a Liqui-Moly or Motul guy, but some Mobil 1 540 was the quickest thing I could get my hands on, which is what I need for now, and I'll probably change in the next 5,000 miles or so anyways. So, not a big deal. Not a big deal. I can't focus with this thing still on the car. I need to get this off. Wow, just horrible, absolutely horrible. They've grounded it to the crash bar. Why is there so much tape everywhere? I mean, this is just insane. Stupid adhesive. As you can see, I've gotten totally sidetracked from the oil change. Oh, nice, look at that. Spider eggs. I think that's actually better. All right, folks, well, before I start draining the oil, I wanted to show you guys a couple things below this ML55. We can see we already have some new upper control arms on both sides. Look brand new. Not sure if they're OE or OEM by any means, but they're new, which is a good sign at least, somewhat. It does have some KYB Excel G shock absorbers, which KYB was the OEM supplier, and this is an OE equivalent. I do have some KYB Monomaxes to replace these, which will be a little bit of an upgrade. I'll show you guys that in a separate video. Looking around below this ML55, things are a little bit oily, but not too bad. If we look up through the engine bay, yeah, that serpentine belt could be definitely changed. I'll probably change that in all the pulleys. It looks like, it's hard to see from there, but if you look toward the middle of your screen, that very oily looking thing is the power steering reservoir. And it appears that the entire power steering system is leaking quite badly. So I'll probably change the reservoir and make sure that's all set up before I go ahead and start changing lines, because that can get kind of costly quickly. We'll go ahead and change those along with the valve cover gaskets. The pump looks to be okay up top, just a little bit wet, sort of where the reservoir connects, which I can tell by a janky reservoir. We will definitely change that out. Other than that, things are looking pretty good down here. I believe new tie rods as well, which are hard to see from this angle. Because the steering rack was rebuilt, so it does kind of make sense. As for lower control arms, those don't seem to have been touched. I should consider probably doing those bushings at some point, but not a huge deal overall. They're definitely better shape than the 500 is, so that's good to see. So for whatever reason, my oil pan, at least my plastic one on the ground here, was full of air despite having that little piece open over that little flap that's supposed to relieve pressure. And, well, my oil pan has overflowed. I gotta say though, despite all that, the oil did not look super dirty, so that might have been changed recently. Don't really know. Just drained the transmission, and thankfully the fluid actually looked pretty good. It wasn't black at all. You can kind of see there, it's still sort of a reddish color, which is good news, which means this fluid isn't ancient. I'm still glad I'm doing this. Just took the old filter out. Gonna check out the date code in a minute there and see where it's from, or when it's from rather. But overall looking pretty good. Only concern was the pan over here had no magnets in it, which means someone forgot to put them back in. But there was no real debris in there, which is pretty cool. Also good news, so always pleasant to see these kind of things. Looks like the connector is just barely wet at the bottom there. Not awful, but I'll definitely check out the TCU itself to see if there's any fluid in there. Hopefully we've escaped disaster here. As you may know, the 722.6 transmission, very reliable transmission. This little connector is the major issue. This connector actually in the conductor plate is what goes bad and can cause lots of problems. There's a little seal in there that can leak fluid. Fluid can then wick up the harness and into the TCU and cause you lots of hurt. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this connector and replace it with a brand new OEM one, and we should be in good shape. Now, the transfer case fluid, as expected, is black because no one ever changes these. Even the dealership rarely changes this fluid, which caused these to blow up eventually. But thankfully we're doing it now, and hopefully we can save this one from blowing up. So the 16355 has been giving me quite a lot of problems. I took it home from work yesterday, and well, I was greeted with the car not leaving second gear, which is very typical of the 722.6 when there's a conductor plate issue. Now, mind you, I did change out the electrical connector a couple of days ago when I did the transmission fluid change and with the new filter. So I'm kind of wondering if those are related. So I'll be checking it out. It is very intermittent, which is also concerning because it also kind of points to a conductor plate failure of some sort. I'll drive it sometimes and it'll shift just fine, and other times it will stay in second or third or whatever it wants to do. I'm going to check out the connector, going to check out the actual TCM to make sure it's not full of fluid. Going to find out shortly. For perspective, I just cleared the codes, and without even turning the car back on, these all immediately come back, which tells me a couple things. You can ignore this guy. This guy's because I'm using a 2005 radio in a 2000, so it's a fiber optic radio with a pre-fiber optic car, so that's irrelevant here. Brake assist, BAS read switch, CAN signals. This could easily be a brake light switch, which is a very common issue on the W163 and other cars from this era of Mercedes. What also concerns me is all of these. So ESP has this laundry list of faults, which I can attribute to one of two things. One, I know that the alignment is very off on this car, so I'm not sure when they changed the steering rack out. To be clear, they changed the rack out before I bought this car about a few months earlier. And then if my fuel filter comes in today, we'll try and change that, but it's looking like tomorrow because it hasn't come in yet, and it's already 7 p.m. So yeah, and I'm doing the fuel filter because the car will occasionally do a very long crank to start up. It's more often than not, I would say about 80% of startups, it's a long crank, unless you shut the car immediately after it was turned off. And I believe that's because of a faulty fuel pressure regulator, which is located in the filter itself. And just to throw a wrench in things even more, is that the W163, I think after a certain model year or certain production of the 163, they changed the fuel filter design, and they put in a bulletin to change every previous car that came in for a fuel filter. They would actually change the lines and change the filter to a much larger filter. Could not get OEM or even OE because it's all NLA, which sucks. This car is only 25 years old, and the 163 go up to 2005, which is only 20 years ago. So, you know, not exactly sure what's going on with that, but had to get an Amazon fuel filter and lines, which I hate doing that, but that was my only option. I don't know why they did this, but that's gotta go. Oh, great. Lovely. Awesome. Well, as you may know by now, the conductor plate in this car is fried, so a new one is on its way. Should be here tomorrow from FCB Euro. We can get that taken care of, and I can get back to driving this car like I was before, at least figuring out what's wrong with it, all the little issues here and there. I've already gotten several parts care packages that I've ordered, so that'll be kind of starting this weekend. We can get some parts on this thing, get it refreshed. After all, it has been sitting for pretty much 3 years. All right, folks, time to do a 722.6 conductor plate speed run. Don't have time for a full DIY, unfortunately, but I will be doing it regardless on my ML55. Perhaps I'll make a full on the DIY when I do the same job on my SL500 with the same transmission. Anyways, I'm gonna get to it and let you guys know how it goes along the way. This is the famous conductor plate that fails on these transmissions, which is what happened on this one. Basically, these guys over here are called speed sensors. Those speed sensors fail. You can see there's a small little crack in either of those. And that essentially causes a misreading because it allows contamination of those sensors with magnetic debris. So car can't read what's going on, it freaks out, puts transmission in limp mode, and you're stuck in like second gear all the time. This is the original one. It has a date code of 2000. So 25 years old, 201,000 miles. That's pretty good, I think. This one's brand new, OEM from Mercedes. So should be good to go. I'm gonna put it back in the car tomorrow after work.
So yeah, that's a wasp hive in the seat. Amazing.
All right, folks, I am currently working on the TCU harness for this ML55. So yeah, I've been having issues with the codes for the speed sensors. I changed out the conductor plate already. Had about 250 miles trouble-free, actually 300 miles trouble-free, and then this issue came back once again, which means it's either the harness or the TCU itself. Now, I have fixes for both of these things. I have a backup TCU from the junkyard now. Don't know if it's working or not, but it is this backup, so we can always test it out if necessary. But upon further inspection of the wiring that comes off the conductor plate and goes to the TCU, I found that all of these wires you see here were melted together. Now, when I peeled them apart, I was expecting to see there'd be exposed copper and there'd be, you know, shorting out between several wires, but that wasn't the case. They just kind of peeled apart and they look kind of deformed. So I'm gonna go ahead and change them out and at least splice in some new wire. And I'm doing this just to narrow down the possibilities. Now, I have not verified that there was an issue via a multimeter and checking for continuity, but I figured when the wire melts, or at least the insulation melts, it's gotten hot enough to cause issues, whether it be conductivity problems or others. So I'm gonna go ahead and splice in this better condition wire, as you can see here, and we should be in a better state, at least to further our diagnostics. Now, to get this harness in the cabin is quite an ordeal. I took out pretty much most of the interior down here, which involved taking the seat out, console out, etc. When in reality, I did not have to do any of that stuff. I could have just pulled back this carpet and reached below, which is what I did. I could go ahead and start rewiring or replacing the damaged wire for all 12 wires in this 13-pin connector, and we should be in a much better position to continue our diagnostics if that doesn't solve our problem. No evidence of oil ingress to the TCU. I actually took the TCU out of its plastic box. There's no oil there. There's no oil in the connector either, which sort of leaves us in a weird position. Now, I will mention, if you look at the coloring of the harness over here, you can see it abruptly changes colors right over there. And it appears that that's either where it enters the car, so there could be an element of heat damage, or it could be oil traveling up the harness in the past, which I'm not sure of. Either way, it's not what we want to see, so we'll be getting rid of that and fixing that regardless. Yeah, it is an odd issue for sure. So we will see if this fixes it. It is all part of the process. I can confidently say that 24 solder joints definitely sucked and took a very long time in this terrible position, but it's much better inside the cabin than trying to do this below the car in the transmission tunnel, because that would have been a lot worse. Anyways, now I gotta put this all back together, I guess. But I'll put this back in first, plug it in, clear some codes out too. We'll see if we actually have any response. It sure would be a shame if I got a bad conductor plate out of the box. That'd be weird. It was OE supplier, Continental VDO stampings all over it, so I don't think it's that, but we can't rule it out just yet.
Well, folks, 5,000 miles later and things are still looking pretty good with the ML55. It's been an absolute joy to own so far, and I've done lots of little things which you guys have not seen yet. The transmission issues are completely gone, which is good news, and it's been shifting pretty smoothly ever since, with no issues whatsoever. Lots of plans for the ML55, including off-roading, lifting, etc., and so much more, so stay tuned for that. We'll be seeing a lot more of the channel in the coming months, and there will be ML55 and M113 specific merch coming soon to STA Industries. In fact, if you like this shirt, my M156 63 Interstate-inspired shirt, there will be a 55 variant launching very, very soon, so stay tuned for that and check out the site in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more ML content along with other Mercedes and BMW content as well. And I'll see you in the next one.